Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 133 of USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Ersman, and as always, once again, so glad to have you with me for another really great episode. So today, it's kind of back to school season, and this episode is appropriately timed. Today, we'll hear from a guest who is probably new to a lot of you at least. Today, I had the honor of talking with Dr. Eric Foster-Whiddon. He is a new professor at Tabor, and he has a background as a really impressive New Testament biblical scholar, theologian. When you hear his education background, I think you're going to be impressed. And along with teaching courses at Tabor, Dr. Foster-Whiddon has also played a really instrumental and an important role in launching a brand new initiative at Tabor. And yes, it's an initiative, not a program. That'll make sense here in a few minutes. But just a few days from now, Tabor is launching a brand new Graduate Studies in Ministry initiative, which offers graduate, master's level courses in theology and Christian ministry. As you'll hear, these courses are extremely affordable, and people who are interested are going to be able to most likely get a master's degree at a very affordable price. We'll get into all those details here in just a second. If you've paid attention to the Christian Leader or some of the social media and email stuff you get from USMB lately, you've probably heard a little bit about this, but you may have some questions about what exactly it is, what it entails. So we'll get into all of that today. And I will admit up here on the front that I have a little bit of an extra interest in this because I've signed up to be a student. I'll be taking these courses. And so I was excited to get to know Dr. Eric Foster-Whiddon a little bit and hear more about this really exciting program coming to Tabor. This is a good one with a lot of really helpful and practical information. So we'll take a quick break to hear from this week's sponsor, and then we'll get right to my conversation with Dr. Eric Foster-Whiddon.
Education touches every stage of life and is the focus of the July-August Christian Leader magazine. Are you deciding how to educate your child? Wondering how to better support teachers and students? Or thinking about what it means to love God with your mind? Wherever you are in your educational journey, this issue is for you. Find helpful insights, stories from everyday people, and tools to navigate the school year well. Read it now at christianleadermag.com.
All right, my friends. Well, today I'm excited to introduce you to a new friend of the MB family, first-time guest of the podcast. Dr. Eric Foster-Whiddon is joining us today. A professor at Tabor. We've got a lot of great, exciting things to talk about with a really great program that's getting ready to start up very shortly here. We'll dive in and tell you all about it. But for a lot of us, Dr. Eric Foster-Whiddon is a new name, a new face to a lot of us. And so, Dr. Whiddon, thanks so much for being here. We're excited to get to know you today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. I appreciate the invitation and looking forward to talking about all that's happening with our Graduate Studies and Ministry initiative.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in too. But again, first, a lot of people haven't gotten a chance to know you yet. So I'd love to hear some of your story. So first of all, you have a very impressive background. I don't know how Tabor was lucky enough to draw you in, but I feel blessed to have you in MB world. So for people who are new to you, why don't you tell us more about your background, where you're from, some of your areas of study, and maybe what you did at Tabor and MB world?
Yeah, well, thanks for that question. And before I start talking about myself, I just got to say, we've been very welcomed at Tabor, and I love working with my colleagues. And so I just want to make sure to give a nod to the folks in the Bible and theology department at Tabor. I work with some really, really good scholars and people who know their stuff. So I'm not really an outlier in that way. But so I'm originally from Georgia. My wife and I came from a little town in rural southwestern Georgia. We talk about that part of Georgia. Those of us who are from there talk about it like its own state. Like, you know, you have North Carolina and South Carolina, North Dakota, South Dakota. We call it South Georgia, like it's its own thing.
Okay.
So it's a long way from Atlanta. We're from Moultrie, Georgia, about an hour north of Tallahassee, Florida. And we grew up in this community. Both of us did. Married, raised our family there. We lived there all the way till 2020 and served in ministry there, owned a business and sold a business there. And then the process of discernment that we were going through at the point where we sold our business then led us into further higher education. And so I did an MDiv at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary in Jacksonville, Florida, the Jacksonville campus, because I could work and go to weekend seminar classes in Jacksonville and do it in person as much as possible.
Cool.
And then in 2020, we sold our house and all of our stuff, and we moved to the UK to do more postgraduate studies in the UK. So I did a master's degree at the University of Cambridge in New Testament, and then went up to Scotland and did a PhD in New Testament, researching in the Gospel of John at the University of St. Andrews. And so when we finished the PhD, then ended up landing the job at Tabor. So we moved to Hillsboro, Kansas. And we've just passed the 1-year mark. We moved here in July of 2024 and have finished the first year of teaching and living in Hillsboro. And so when people ask, where are you from? When we first meet people in Hillsboro, we say that we're from Georgia by way of Scotland. So
Nice. Well, yeah, like I said, that's a very impressive education background. So very cool. I'm curious, how did you land on the Gospel of John? I'm sure there's probably a long story, but how was that kind of your focus of your studies?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot I can talk about regarding it, but as far as how I landed there, the simplest answer is just that the Gospel of John and the letters of John were just very impactful for me in my personal faith as I grew as a Christian throughout the years. I became a Christian in earnest, really. It became a personal faith for me when I was a teenager. And I found myself being drawn back to the Gospel of John more and more over the years. In fact, when I think about how I think about Jesus, a lot of the way I think about Jesus is shaped by the way he's presented in the Gospel of John. So it grabbed me.
Yeah.
And it has grabbed Christians historically. From the very beginning, it's been something that people are drawn to. And as far as like scholarly interests are concerned, in general, especially when I was doing my master's of divinity at Gordon Conwell, I found that I was very interested in Johannine literature, which would be John, the epistles, and Revelation. And so I was interested in Johannine literature. I was interested in ancient philosophy. So I took a class in ancient philosophy and theology at seminary that was really, really interesting. And then I'm also just interested in literature broadly and how ancient literature works. And so those things all kind of coalesced for me in my research trajectory that began with my PhD thesis.
Oh, very cool. I'd love to ask you more about that, but we've got a lot to cover. So maybe so we can dive into that. So that's awesome. Last point of just bio information, I have to ask you, I saw on your resume or your work history, beans and strings. Tell me about beans and strings.
Yeah, so that's the business that I referenced earlier. I'm a kind of a second or third career academic, who's counting, but so my path led from an undergraduate degree in Christian ministry to about a decade in full-time church staff ministry, mainly in youth ministry. And then through a season of discipleship, we just felt that the Lord was calling us to open a business. And so we opened a business in downtown Moultrie, Georgia, and it was a beans and strings. It was a music school with a coffee shop in the front. So it's a combination business model. Yeah.
Cool.
And so it's coffee beans and guitar strings. And so I ran the music school side of it and the business as a whole. My wife ran the cafe side of it. And we had just watched in our little town, we watched cafes open and close. We watched guitar shops open and close. And as a youth pastor, I just kept teaching kids how to play guitar, and I would teach a bunch of students and then I'd let them all go because I needed to focus on ministry. And then some mom would say, but the only thing my son's interested in is guitar. Would you please teach him? And I would say yes. And the next thing you know, I've got a dozen students again. And I would watch parents just sit in their car outside of our house for 30 minutes or an hour at the time. And I thought they could be sitting in a cafe drinking coffee, and maybe these two businesses could work together to sustain the whole model. And it worked. Yeah,
that's smart. That's cool. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we, at the end of that season, again, through a season of discernment, felt that God was calling us into this next season. And so we sold the business, and what we learned in entrepreneurship and through that business made what we're doing now possible. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now in scholarship if I had not been an entrepreneur first.
Very cool. I love that. That's a great idea. I think more people should do that. Okay, we got to dive into the program. That's what we're talking about today. And I know we got a lot of ground to cover. So you mentioned that you've been at Tabor for about a year. And one of the things that brought you to Tabor, what Tabor was interested in bringing you in, was to start this new graduate studies and ministry program. So I think a lot of people have kind of heard little bits and pieces about it. I think there's a lot of people who are really excited about it. I think there's still some confusion about what exactly it is and how is it going to work and all those kinds of things. So let's just start from the beginning. What is the graduate studies and ministry program?
Yeah, well, to start with, it's an important technical note to say, at the time of recording this podcast, it's not a program yet. Okay. So We intentionally
Initiative.
avoid that word right now.
Okay.
And
Good.
it's just a technicality, really, but it's an important
Yes.
technicality
Yes.
because right now Tabor College can offer accredited graduate courses in ministry, Bible, theology, etc. But until we get approved by the HLC, the Higher Learning Commission, to offer a master's degree or a program, then we can use that language. But for right now, we're offering courses, master's degree courses, master's level courses in ministry. And we are applying currently for approval to have a program and a master's degree. And so hopefully in about a year's time, we'll be full sail master's degree program. But right now, it's an initiative.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. So it's a little clunky. We always trip over it. So yeah. But so what is it? It's a really beautiful collaboration between especially the southern and central districts of the USMB churches and Tabor College to provide ministry training, which would include Bible, theology, church history, ministry courses that help equip folks for ministry in whatever context they're called to. And so for some students, that's going to be, hey, I'm already serving in full-time ministry. For some people, I'm doing part-time ministry, paid part-time ministry. For some people, they don't expect to ever draw a check from a church, but they feel called to ministry in some form, and they want further training in that area. And so the districts have essentially come to Tabor and said, what can we do together to make this happen? And so I've spent a year working with our steering team, but it's been work in the process for much longer than that, working toward this point. And now at the time of recording, we're right on the precipice of launching our first course and our first year of graduate studies and ministry courses.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I know we've talked on the podcast before that for years now, USMB specifically, but also Christian churches in the U.S. and around the world have talked about there's this kind of pending leadership shortage. A lot of pastors are kind of aging out. There's kind of this lack of a succession plan for a lot of churches. So we've been talking about how USMB in general, and specifically, but also churches in general, just need to do a better job of raising up leaders. Is that part of where this came from?
Absolutely. And of course, you're, deep within the USMB world. I'm very new to it. So when I speak about this leadership shortage, I'm speaking behind the comments that other people have made to me.
Sure.
And all of my personal experience has just been in the Hillsborough area with our churches mainly. But what I understand from talking to my friends and colleagues is that, there's been this leadership shortage, and a lot of churches, from what I gather in these districts, have ended up drawing leadership from other denominations. So we have pastors that come into the USMB that serve churches and serve them well. These are really good pastors, but they haven't been raised in the USMB. They don't come from within the USMB. And that's not necessarily a problem, but it also indicates for our conference of churches that we need to do a better job of raising people up from within too, so that we're not always farming out to other denominations and traditions. And so that's a big part of what this is about. This GSM initiative is to help raise from within USMB leadership and understand maybe in a new way what the USMB identity is, what it means to be USMB, and then to supply churches from, help our own people discern calls to ministry.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned there's really a pretty wide variety of people who could potentially take these courses, people who are already in ministry, considering ministry, or maybe just want to further their own faith development. I think that's great. So as the committee, as you are kind of putting these courses together, again, I know there's a wide variety, but who's kind of the sweet spot? Like who is this really designed for?
Yeah, that was a question we had to wrestle with a good bit at the beginning as we were working through this deal. And what we landed on is kind of a really basic profile for our default student, at least at this point in the development of GSM. Is our default student is a person who has completed a bachelor's degree, but probably not anything in Bible and theology or ministry, probably some other field.
Okay.
And at some point, since they last studied, they've sensed a call to ministry at some level, in some way. And this person is involved in a local church context, is serving in a local church context, and their church identifies them as someone who has a calling from God on their lives and on their life. and wants to support them to continue the discernment process and to get some training for whatever the next season of ministry might be for them. And so we don't expect when students come into any GSM course that they've had any real substantial amount of theological education before. And
That's great. And just for people, GSM, the Graduate Studies in Ministry, right? I know that's
right.
I remind myself what that stands for, so that's good.
Yeah. I'll probably default to GSM a lot, but that's what it is. It's Graduate Studies in Ministry. Yeah.
Cool. And I know, again, just myself, and I've heard some other people kind of talk about this, like this isn't necessarily like a seminary degree. This isn't like an MDiv or anything like that. So can you kind of help people who have some questions about, like, this doesn't necessarily replace maybe a higher ed degree, but this is maybe a little bit more practical? Or how would you kind of break that down for people who would like some more clarification of what that means or what the differences are?
Yeah, sure. So if you've ever taken a gander at kind of the slate of options for a master's degree in theological education, there are a variety of options out there. And so at the master's level, there's kind of the gold standard for pastors historically has been an MDiv, which is a master in divinity. But then there are also a Master of Arts degrees, MAs. And so an MDiv is very comprehensive. It's a thick, heavy degree. For a lot of pastors, it's the last degree they ever get. And it's comprised of essentially mainly four subdisciplines. So you have Bible, theology, church history, and then practical ministry courses. And an MDiv usually is somewhere around 90 credit hours, somewhere in that range. Mine was about 90 credit hours. And so you're talking quite a lot of classes to do that. A typical class is 3 hours. So you're talking 30 courses to get through a Master of Divinity. MAs will often be much, much lighter, and people will sometimes get multiple MAs if they want to, if they're interested in that. And so what we envision for this, once it eventually, Lord willing, is approved by HLC and we're able to have a full-fledged master's degree program, would be an MA in ministry. And so that's what we're proposing to the HLC for accreditation. And it is a master's degree, and it's very similar to an MDiv in the spread of types of courses. So we have those same four categories within our curriculum. But it's only 36 hours. It's not 90-something hours. And so this is a course the curriculum takes 2 years for a student to go through all 12 courses that we have. And that would be taking 2 courses a semester, back-to-back, year-round. So 3 semesters a year for 2 years. And they would be finished with it in 2 years.
Gotcha. Cool. So while we're there, tell us more about the classes. Like, what kinds of content will these students be going through?
Yeah. So, like, for instance, I'll give an example. The first 2 courses that we're launching in the fall of this coming semester, so this would be fall semester of 2025, they're doing Old Testament 1, which is the survey of the Old Testament beginning in Genesis and going through Esther. And then they will, once they've completed that course, will then move into Preaching 1. And Preaching 1 is a course that's going to focus specifically on crafting. Well, it's the art of crafting sermons, but it's specifically Preaching 1 specifically is about writing and delivering sermons from Old Testament narrative. So it's focusing on using Old Testament text. And the way that those courses are designed, they're paired that way intentionally, so that when a student is doing Old Testament 1, they're working on a paper and they're doing some background work that they then use as the jumping off point for crafting their sermon in Preaching 1. So those two courses are paired together in an A-B kind of format, so that there's continuity between them, so that a student thinks deeply about Old Testament literature for about 8 weeks in the first course, and they don't then have like cognitive whiplash moving into something totally different for the next 8 weeks. They take what they've been thinking about and then figure out, okay, now what does this look like in the life of the church? How do I use this in teaching and preaching in the church? How do I deliver these things that I've thought so deeply about for 8 weeks in the church context? And so that's the first semester. And then the spring semester, we start with New Testament 1, so very similar kind of thing. That's the Gospels and Acts. I'll be teaching that course. And then we move into a class on missional leadership. And so, so these courses are paired in that way so that there's continuity between them. And the courses are like probably 85% online.
Okay. Yeah.
And so some amount of the online material is what's called asynchronous, meaning it's pre-recorded or it's things that you do on your own time. You can work it around your life schedule. But then certain elements of it involve live video conferencing. So whether that may be some live lectures or a weekly cohort meeting with other students in the class that does happen every week. But then there's also an element that happens one time for every course where students who are in the geographic area of the event come together for a weekend GSM local event where they get to interact in person in the room. They get to hear live lectures from their instructor in the room. And they also get to see a church who has sent a student into the GSM course and see where they minister, and they get to meet the church leadership at that church. And it helps them become more familiar with USMB churches and that the students in the course serve in. That's
awesome. And I guess maybe this is a good time for me to be full disclosure. I'm actually going to be a student. I'm a part of the program. So I'm going to be starting this fall. I'm excited. It's going to be a great program. I'm really excited to dive into. So one more thing I was curious to ask you about, like, I know obviously you are a scholar, like you've spent a lot of time, you've devoted a lot of your life to deep theological study. And then a lot of the people who are taking these classes are probably going to be, like we said, current pastors are involved in current ministry in some capacity. So how would you, it sounds to me like there's a really good mix of the practical, the preaching, the leadership, and then some scholarly kind of deep research into the text as well. That's kind of ideally every pastor would be really good at both of those things, and they'd spend a lot of time doing scholarly research and be in the trenches and do counseling and preaching and all those kinds of things. Was that a kind of an intentional goal for you to really balance both of those? Because I'd imagine that'd be a pretty tough thing to figure out how to balance those things.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It was. The way that I like to say it, the way that we say it within the GSM initiative is that we do want to help students think deeply about these kind of classic divinity topics that have just very real personal and community importance when it comes to what it looks like to follow Jesus, to be a Christian, to live the life of faith. And I think that it's really easy. It's tempting for someone who's living in a full-time ministry role to feel like that what really matters the most at all times is the practical nuts and bolts of how to do the thing that's right in front of me today. And I don't want in any way disparage that impulse because it's real. I mean, I have lived that. I know what it's like. It's hard to stay committed to deep theological or biblical like thought and study when you're also just trying to navigate the realities of day-to-day ministry. But at the same time, it's also important for people, especially pastors, but also people who teach and in the church or fill the pulpit occasionally, that kind of thing, to remember that for the people in your congregation, you're probably going to be the expert on Bible and theology in their lives, the person who has the most education and training that they've ever really encountered, unless they've done classes somewhere like Tabor. But that pastoral role, that ministry role in the local context has way more longevity and way more importance and impact in the life of a local Christian than even a college professor's impact does. And so as best we can help equip pastors and ministry leaders to do this deep thinking part, but then also figure out how to maintain this in their ministry life in a way where they're being enriched, they're bringing kind of the best stuff to the church, and they're being really faithful as they rightly divide the word of truth and as they help raise up their congregations to maturity, to the full stature of Jesus Christ,
Yeah, that's great. I think I agree with you that that's very important. And I think that's probably at least the main reason why these courses in this initiative was designed the way that it was, because you uprooted your life and moved to Scotland for deep study, right? And I know a lot of pastors and leaders who are going to be in this program maybe don't feel like they have the flexibility to do that. They're leading a church, they've got a family or whatever. So was that, but at the same time, so you want the education to be attainable and in a format that allows average people to be able to do this, but you don't want that to water down the content, right? So can you talk a little bit more about just there's a lot of things online, there's some things in person, and I know there's kind of, I think most people these days would agree that online education is valid and legit, but there's maybe still some critics out there that say it's not quite as good as what obviously you would have gotten in Cambridge or whatever. Can you talk about that
Yeah.
a little bit, the quality and kind of balancing online and in person?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. Thanks for asking that. So for one thing, there are certain elements of what we do that anyone who has been aware of online education in the last decade or two, even, but
Hmm.
especially the last decade, feels very normal. Like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we there are lots of, graduate theological, programs out there at other institutions that do this same kind of thing in certain ways. And so it's not completely novel in any way.
Hmm. Hmm.
But so there is for me some personal autobiographical background to what has informed at least what I brought to the table in the
Hmm.
formation of this thing. And that's simply that though I did uproot my family, so to speak, and move to the UK for 4 years for those
Yeah.
degrees,
Hmm.
I spent 3 years before that
Hmm.
living in Georgia and driving back and forth to Jacksonville, Florida to go to classes at the Gordon Conwell campus in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And I did it that way for the exact reason that you were just saying. I wasn't in a position at that point where I was ready to or could move.
Yeah. Right.
And so for me, like when I was looking for a seminary education, I wanted something that was going to give me a robust formative experience, but I
Hmm.
wasn't the traditional residential model, which is really, really good in lots of ways, just was not going to fit for me.
Right.
And I would say for a lot of people, especially adults coming, older adults, people that haven't come right out of undergrad coming back to education are in that
Hmm.
situation. Or
Yeah.
maybe pastors who are already serving but haven't done a higher education, like master's level education,
Hmm.
they're in that position too. And so they need to stay where they are. And so there's a value for both making the courses that we offer accessible
Hmm.
so that we're honoring where they are and what they're doing and making sure to get the best stuff we can to them that fits with where they are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a certain like formational aspect to theological education that
Hmm.
just there has to be a certain amount of in-person engagement for that to really happen the way it needs to,
Yeah.
because this is a different course of study than something in other fields.
Mm.
Other fields lend themselves better to just purely online. But
Yeah.
when we're doing this is about Christian community. It's
Hmm.
about building the church. It's about being formed together as we go through this process of higher education and adding. We've had the asynchronous online components, which is a bulk of our courses, to add to make sure that we offer that flexibility. But the in-person Zoom calls that happen, and especially the once per course
Hmm.
in-person local event, those things help bring it takes the quality level of what we're able to do up several notches, and
Yeah.
it brings in this in the room experience, whether it's in a Zoom room or in a physical room, in a
Mm.
way that the what we do would be much diminished if we didn't do that, and we would be doing our students a disservice if we didn't offer those kinds of things.
Yeah, maybe follow up on that. So what I have a master's in digital media that was 100% online. So I never met any of my classmates. I never stepped foot on campus. I think I believe I still received a quality education, but maybe media is one like you're saying that you maybe could do on completely online a little bit easier than ministry. But I think another part of that is just the community aspect of it, right? Like I imagine these students are gonna actually get to know their peers, actually get to know their professors in a way that you couldn't online. So is that community element of it something that is intentional in this as well?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, when we have in a course, as best we can, our plan is to divide students or organize the students into cohorts that are
Hmm.
somewhat broadly geographically based.
Okay, cool.
An ideal situation would be if we had a Southern District cohort and a Central District cohort, because those are the two main districts we're working with at this point. But it's not always going to work quite that cleanly.
Yeah.
But the idea behind even doing that, so when those cohorts meet together for Zoom calls, you're
Hmm.
working with people who are geographically in kind of broadly the same area as you, which then helps you build a relationship and brings up the possibility of actual in-person interaction when you go to things like the Southern District Conference or convention,
Yeah.
or events that
Yeah.
happen at churches in your area, things like that. Yeah. And so absolutely. The community building aspect of it is very important.
Yeah, cool. Well, a couple more kind of just nuts and bolts questions. I think you said that, can you just clarify if someone is interested in this, do you have to have a bachelor's degree coming into this? Does your bachelor's degree have to be in ministry? And maybe even what if someone would like to take some of these courses, but they're not even necessarily interested in the master's part of it? Can you kind of just spell out some of the requirements and the options that are
Yeah,
available?
absolutely. So what we're doing at where we are at this point, as we just launched the whole thing, is a student who wants to take courses with GSM if they want it accredited, they need a bachelor's degree. It can be in any subject. It does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that. Can someone without a bachelor's degree take courses at this point? I think there's an option for auditing that you could do. But I will say, apart from that, you hear the hesitancy in my answer there. But apart from that, it is on the radar for us to eventually be able to offer some sort of a track for courses for people who are not looking for an accredited degree and do not may not have a bachelor's degree, but want some just nuts and bolts training that would be, it wouldn't be a degree and it wouldn't be accredited through HLC, but it would be basically an endorsement that is handed down from the district that that person's church is part of, where they can engage in the courses at some level, a lighter level, but allow some access to people like that. But that's down the road. We're not anywhere near putting that into place yet, but it is a value for us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, speaking about making it accessible, my next question, I know you all in the Southern District and USMB has worked really hard to make this affordable. So it's primarily online so people can continue to work and whatever their responsibilities are. But obviously cost is a big factor for a lot of people why they don't get further study, further degrees. Education is understandably very expensive these days, but I know that was just a very core thing from the beginning, was to make this affordable. And I think it's honestly pretty amazing how this all came together. So can you just walk through the finances of it? Because I think it's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. As it's come together, I've multiple times just thought, really? Is this how it's working? This is amazing.
It is.
So the sticker price for the entire curriculum, like if you did every course that we're offering, which takes two years, it's 12 courses, the sticker price for that for tuition is $14,000. Okay. Which already is actually a very competitive cost per credit hour for a master's level course. So, but that also sounds like a lot of money. And so for the average student, you're like, I don't have 14 grand laying around that I can dish out over the next 2 years. And of course, we all know about the student loan crisis in the United States right now, which is a problem. But so because the central and southern districts and the USMB and our institution, Tabor College, and the local churches, they've all bought into the need to raise up the next generation of USMB leaders, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. And so there are multiple streams of funding and scholarships available for students to line up to be able to do this program at a very cost-effective rate. And so and there are different ones apply based off of if you're planning to go into full-time ministry or if you're planning to do part-time or volunteer or whatever. So depending on what combination of funding streams are available to you between the districts, the local church, the host congregations that send the students, Tabor College, the MB Foundation, etc., the average student at the end of the day will only pay out of pocket for the entirety of the curriculum somewhere between 10 to 25% of the tuition cost of that 14 grand. Yeah. So it could be, it's incredibly affordable. And so we're talking a very, very light financial commitment from the student themselves.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm grateful that our denomination, like you said, is putting their money where their mouth is, and they see the value in this. So I guess I know there's a lot of variables, so not everyone will have the exact same cost, but some students will pay under $2,000, right? They'll have a complete master's degree for less than $2,000.
Yeah, if I had to put, and this is all still kind of tentative, but depending on the combination of stuff, you could have students that pay, most students I would say are going to pay somewhere around more or less $2,000 for their tuition for the entirety of the 12 courses. It could be more or less depending on their situation, but we're kind of in that range, if that helps to think about it that way.
Sure. And again, that's a bargain of all bargains.
I mean, when it comes down to it, what you're doing actually is getting 12 courses. If you do the whole curriculum, 12 courses for the cost of 1 or 2 courses.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. Again, I'm just so grateful we have a denomination that cares deeply about education, because that's so incredible.
That definitely speaks to this, where the denomination is right now, and
Yeah.
their desire to raise up leaders. They really are truly investing in the next generation of leadership.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so while we're on that, so I think it's convenient, it's affordable. Some other people might be asking, like, why Tabor? Why should I do this program over a different school, different university that offers a similar program? I think there's probably some MB distinctives as we go through Old Testament, New Testament, church history. Is the MB, the Anabaptist distinctives, something that kind of sets it apart? Or how else would you kind of pitch this versus another kind of similar program?
Yeah, absolutely. The MB distinctives part of it is absolutely important. So the way that we do what we do is guided by MB identity. And so, for instance, an example of this would be, we have a Systematic Theology 1 and Systematic Theology 2 course.
Mm-hmm.
Those courses framework that introduces these theological topics for discussion is the MB Confession of Faith. So that's the framework we work through to then get into these topics and think about them deeply. And so that's just one example. When we do the church history course, it's from an MB Anabaptist perspective. And so that affects the things that you focus on, because in this church history course. So the MB distinctive part of it is definitely a big deal. Another big part of why this should be attractive, I would hope it would be attractive to people, MB students who are thinking about doing this kind of study, is the community building part of it. Because through the local events and through the cohorts, you're learning more about the family that you belong to. You're getting to go to churches who have students in the courses and seeing what ministry looks like in those churches. And you're walking alongside other MB students as they're going through the curriculum. And that's really, I think that's powerful and has a lot of potential for strengthening the districts and the denomination as a whole. And as I think about the why Tabor question, I'm reminded of my friend and colleague Wendell Lowen does a tremendous job of talking about the history of the USMB denomination and Tabor as an institution. And there's this line from the history of this school where the MBs in the area rallied around the school in its beginning, and they would call it in German, unsere Schule. So our school, our school. That was the chant, because it's distinctly MB. It's our school.
Yeah.
And I feel like that same spirit is in this Graduate Studies and Ministry initiative. It's very much for those who are discerning a call to ministry and looking for more training. It's very much unsere Schule. It's very much our courses, our community. It's our school.
Yeah, that's awesome. And this is something I'm still honestly a little bit hazy about, but I know something else that's unique is kind of the whole mentorship element of this. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you chose to do it that way, and maybe explain what that part of the program looks like, or the initiative, excuse me?
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, so for instance, we'll use you as an example because you've disclosed that you're a student, which we're super excited about. So as you start courses, when you take Old Testament 1, your Old Testament 1 course will have a teaching team that's consisted of an instructor who has a terminal degree in that field. So your professor for Old Testament 1 is Josh Gillette, who is the pastor at North Oak Community Church in Hays, Kansas. He's an MB pastor. He has a PhD in Old Testament. And then you'll have a cohort facilitator that will meet with you on a regular basis. That team changes from course to course. So you won't always have those two people in every course you take.
Sure.
However, as you start studying with GSM, you'll be placed with, or you will develop a relationship with a mentor, someone that you recommend. Hey, I'd like to use this person as my mentor. And that person will walk with you for the entirety of your studies with GSM. And so that person does not change.
Cool.
And that's a person that you will meet with some regularity. You may do some reading together, but you'll do it's very pastoral, and it's where a lot of the spiritual formation aspect of what we're doing comes into play. And that's helpful for a few different reasons. One reason is because it gives you the consistency of having someone speaking into your life and checking in on you as you're working through courses. You're hearing things that challenge you and you're having to work with them. You're trying to balance work and study and family life and all these things. And so it's that pastoral role that helps walk you through this on a regular basis with some intentionality. But the other thing that we felt like was very important about the mentor role is that we have a wealth of resources in our people in the USMB community. And some of these people, like Josh, have a PhD and are able to teach a course. Other people have master's degrees, so they can't teach a graduate course as the instructor, but they can serve as a cohort facilitator. So our cohort facilitators are largely pastors. But then we also have pastors who are seasoned ministry leaders, and not just pastors, sometimes elders and other church leadership. They're seasoned church leaders who are mature, who love the Lord and love the church, but may not have even a bachelor's degree, but they have so much to offer. And so the mentor role gives us an opportunity to bring these people into this and make sure that our students are benefiting from the richness of the leadership in the USMB denomination across levels of education.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's a great model. I think it's very good. Okay, I've got a couple more things we have to get to. Our time's going fast here. But one more question. People maybe have heard about this and they're interested, but maybe some people might be a little bit hesitant because of the up in the airness of the HLC and the initiative versus the program. And there may be, I don't really want to do this if I'm not for sure going to end up with a new degree. I know you obviously we can't promise anything. There's a lot of things that are kind of out of Tabor's hands, but if someone's interested, but that's kind of a little bit of causing a little bit of hesitancy, what would you say to them?
Yeah. So we want to be cautiously enthusiastic or cautiously positive about this, because I don't want to in any way, I want to under-promise and over-deliver. Okay.
Yeah.
And so any student who signs up like yourself to start courses now just needs to know where we are in process.
Yeah.
Where we are in process is incredibly normal. It's just how it works. Okay. So it's not anything unusual. Any course that we offer right now, like Old Testament 1, is fully accredited, goes on your transcript. It's transferable to other programs if you wanted to do that kind of thing, because Tabor College is accredited to offer graduate courses in this discipline. We've had graduate courses and a program in this discipline before.
Okay.
So that's no problem. It's all legit. It's all accredited above board right out of the gate. As far as getting a master's degree from Tabor College in ministry, the courses that we're launching now are the curriculum for the master's degree that we're proposing. And so they would all be retroactively applicable to a master's degree once it's approved.
Gotcha.
As far as the forecast for that is concerned, we feel very positive about how this will go. We have a good relationship and good standing with HLC. They like the way that we do what we do as an institution, which is really good.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of work already in building out the language of what we're doing and our vision for what we're doing. And so we feel like we have a really healthy proposal to bring before HLC. And, God willing, we expect it to go well. And we have really good support also internally from our administration who have experience with doing these kinds of things. We have several other master's degree programs in other disciplines that we've gone through this exact same process with. So this is not the first time as an institution that we've done this kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool. Very good. Okay. So as we're recording, it's late July. Classes are starting soon. Some people, again, this kind of it's new. It's kind of come along quickly, I think. So some people may have heard about it kind of recently and they're kind of interested, but maybe, I don't know if they feel like it's maybe too late. Can you just walk through if they're interested, want to learn more? Is it too late? Can we jump in next semester? What's kind of the next step is if they'd like to learn more or sign up?
Yeah, great question. That's an important question. So the first day of courses for the fall 2025 semester is August the 18th. So if you're listening to this before August the 18th, then you still have time to reach out and check and see if you have the margin to be able to get an application in and start in the fall semester. If you're not able to make it for the fall semester, then you can absolutely go ahead and start the application process to start in the spring semester. The way that we've built the curriculum out, I mentioned earlier that every semester there's an A course and a B course. You can start studying with GSM and start the GSM curriculum with any A course in any semester. And so,
Okay.
yeah, you don't have to wait for the beginning of an academic year. You don't have to wait for a 2-year cycle to roll around. You can start at the beginning of any semester, fall, spring, or summer.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, it's not too late. There's still time to sign up. That's great. Well, I've kind of got one last question, just kind of a big picture question. Is there anything else specific about the initiative of the program, courses that we didn't talk about that you want to make sure that we hit?
The only other thing that I will mention that I think is really exciting is I've several times made reference to the GSM local events. And this is a weekend in-person kind of seminar type weekend that happens. There's one in every course. And the idea behind these is they rotate between a Southern District and Central District, and they'll be held at churches that they're hosted by churches that have a student in GSM courses. And what's really exciting about that, other than the fact that students get to meet their instructor in person and interact with their cohort and their cohort facilitator in person, but these events start on Friday evening with a public lecture from the instructor. And so the church that hosts it helps promote it, and it's open to the public to come and hear a lecture from a course that's in the GSM curriculum, and they get to just enrich their own theological or biblical understanding. They get to see from the inside what kind of things are happening, and it also helps build more relationships between students, church leadership, churches, and Tabor College. The first one that we're doing is in Hillsboro, actually, at Hillsboro Mennonite Brethren Church on August 22nd and 23rd, 2025. It goes with the Old Testament 1 course. Josh Gillette will be doing the lecture, and we expect that it's going to be really good. So you can check all of our normal website, social media stuff for more information about that if you're interested.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, obviously, I see a lot of value in this. I'm excited to jump in and do it. I think it's a great thing. Thank you for all the leadership that you're bringing and the experience that you bring. I think it's going to be a lot of good fruit out of this. And kind of last question as we start to wrap up. I'm just curious, just because I'm still getting to know you. I'm guessing, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm guessing growing up in Georgia, not really an MB background. I'm guessing maybe you hadn't even heard of Tabor until maybe a few years ago. What, as you're kind of getting into the USMB, both like theologically and also just kind of community, what are your kind of first, what's it like to be new to the USMB family and Anabaptist theology, if that wasn't necessarily part of your upbringing? What's that like for you?
Yeah, it's been a really good experience. We've had a great first year. People have been friendly both at the institution and then the MB family as a whole. And so that's been really good. A lot of positivity there. As far as like the theological distinctives and things like that, it's really interesting because the way I describe it is that there are places that I landed personally. I come from a Methodist background, so a Wesleyan background. Places where I've landed in certain issues, certain topics. When I came here and began to learn about MB theological identity and distinctives, I'm like, there's actually a lot of alignment here, which is really cool. And I've ended up there by a different route, but it's very much kind of in the same zip code as the distinctives of the MB world. So as a biblical scholar and a Bible nerd, generally, I really appreciate kind of the hermeneutical focus of the way the Mennonite Brethren read the scripture. I find a lot of value in that.
Cool. Well, I'm, again, just so glad to have you part of the bigger USMB family. Thanks again for your efforts at Tabor. And I'm excited for the program, not just for myself, but I think it's going to really serve our denomination really well. So thanks for all the leadership that you bring to it.
Yeah, and thanks for the chat today, Matt, and for being part of the first course.
Yes. I'll see you soon in an online classroom near you.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time, Dr. Eric Foster-Whiddon. Really great to chat with you, and we look forward to many more.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Well, as we wrap up here, once again, many thanks to Dr. Eric Foster-Whiddon for joining us for this conversation. And man, thanks to Tabor, thanks to USMB. I'm just really glad, like I said in the conversation a few times, that our denomination, our conference, cares about developing young leaders. I think this is so important, and this is going to be a real tool that can meet a practical and tangible need in our churches and our communities. This is a really, I think, a great thing. So if you yourself are interested in learning more about this, like they said today, it's not too late to sign up. You've got a few more days. So you can head over to tabor.edu, follow them on all the socials. I'm sure you can track down the information or get in contact with them if you need some help figuring out what all you need to do if you'd like to apply. All right, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode as we also wrap up the summer. So thanks again for those of you who listened along with me over the summer. as we gear back up for back to school in the fall semester. Hope you and your family, your churches are doing well, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time here on Lead Pods.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.